First, we had the Nintendo Entertainment System. Then we had the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Both consoles defined generations of games and set standards that the industry still follows today. The controllers for both systems are iconic, with the NES making the D-pad a norm for almost every controller to follow in its wake, and the SNES introducing shoulder buttons. Over the years, the way we play games has continued to evolve, but that doesn't mean we have to forget where it all came from. 8BitDo has been creating Bluetooth controllers that are more than a little inspired by Nintendo's past. While the legality remains in question, the idea of being able to use a NES-inspired controller with the layout of a Super Nintendo controller sounds, well, pretty cool. And then they went ahead and just released another controller that's, well, a Bluetooth Super Nintendo controller. Both of these controllers function the same and are able to connect to smartphones, PCs, Macs, and more, all with the classic comfort of the original controllers without any of the wires. The first thing you'll notice about both of these controllers is how spot on they are, SNES30 more so than the NES30. But beyond the solid retro exterior is the feel of both. The D-pad and buttons feel exactly like the original controllers, arguably better in some cases since these haven't had the time to be abused by age. Because this is based on the NES's original incarnation, the D-pad is a little small, and the overall size of the controller isn't exactly perfect. The NES30 shoulder buttons do feel a little strange because of the rectangular shape of the controller, but they're also clicky and very responsive. At the same time, I felt it was a little awkward to hit at times, as they are fairly thin and small. Never to the point that they couldn't be hit, but noticeable enough that I felt like I needed to arch my index fingers. That being said, this controller has no latency issues in the slightest and is a ton of fun to use. The SNES30 feels way better than the NES30. The controller is bigger and has the same rounded ends as the original. Overall, I always liked the SNES controller better than the NES, and this rings true here. The buttons are also responsive and feel perfect, with no delay whatsoever. There's really no difference between the original and this recreation, other than the D-pad feels a little bit mushier, and you know what, that's a big plus. Again, it could be due to age, but I always felt like the Super Nintendo's original controller was a bit stiff at times. The SNES30 doesn't have this issue, and ever since I picked it up at Christmas, the NES30 has unfortunately been neglected. As I said before, the functionality of these sticks are one and the same. By holding a certain button and start button, the controller will turn on with a different function. These modes help connect the controller to devices that may not recognize them otherwise. I personally use the joystick mode the most, but the controller can also connect as a keyboard, a mix of the two, as well as a couple other modes as well. I've never had any trouble connecting them to my smartphone or to my tower or laptop by USB. The NES30 also gave me no issues when connecting wirelessly to my tower or laptop, as did the SNES30 at first. I'm not really sure why. At first I thought it might be Windows 8 or something wrong with the drivers, but no matter what, I can't get the SNES30 to connect wirelessly anymore without having to delete the driver and the entire device from my system, and then go through and re-add it back in. In other words, not exactly plug and play like it should be. Both of these controllers have upgradable firmware, which is nice because it will add in new features and fix bugs with the sticks. Unfortunately, upgrading didn't fix the issues I've been having with the SNES30, but it has improved the NES30 connection time, which thankfully the pairing process on both these devices is pretty quick. Both controllers are advertised to work with the Wii and subsequently the Wii U. I've tried to put it into the Wii mode multiple times, and for the life of me, I can't get this to work. And I know I'm not alone, because this Wii mode is just plain broken on these things. It doesn't help that neither controller has an IR sensor, meaning that you can't navigate the home menu. So in the long run, you'd still need a regular Wiimote to get to your games, and in the end, there's not really any games you can play on them anyway, since they don't support waggle motion, and that's something nearly every 2D Wii game seemed to have. If you're a fan of more retro or at least 2D inspired games on Steam or the Google Play Store, both of these controllers are worth looking into. As I'm sure you've noticed, indie games are perfect for the 30s, as long as you're willing to put the time into configuring them. That is the biggest thing to understand about these controllers. They will require you to tweak some settings and play around a bit to get them just right. Usually, this won't take long, but mileage may vary depending on the game. Titles like Shovel Knight are so much fun to play with the 30s, seeing as all the controls can be mapped to the buttons with plenty to spare. A lot of time and care was put into making the 30 series. They aren't without their faults, and I can't decide if the issues I ran into with the SNES30 are a fluke or might be consistent. I'd still recommend both controllers, especially if you're in the market for classic controllers to use on your Mac or PC. 8BitDo also offers modernized versions of the NES30 with extra buttons and control sticks, plus different color schemes for the Japanese versions of both consoles, the Famicom and Super Famicom. Both controllers have a built-in rechargeable battery and last a good 20 hours or so on a single charge, which is more than a little convenient. There's a lot to love here, and for $30 a pop on Amazon, you'll be getting a high-quality controller with all the flavor of the systems we grew up with.